whilst you may think that when the legislation ends, that legislators, state senators, and state representatives don't have much to do over the summer. Well, not only do they show up at parades, but there is work that they do all summer long. Joining us in the studio is State Senator Mark Messmer, and we've always talked off camera about the fact that this is a job that really is 12 months.
It's year round.
Yeah, it is. Because people come up and talk to you about things, and there's a lot of events that you show up at. But you're actually, through the summer, doing legislative work in a way.
Yeah, we do. We do have during the off season, we officially call it the interim period.
Okay.
There'll be a session that'll start. You could start as early as July, but typically they're August, September, October is when most of what they call the interim study committees will meet. During session, there's multiple ways you can request issues to be studied, farther during that interim study committee period. You might file a resolution, that you get other senators, other representatives, to co-sign with you, and it would be a resolution that say we urge the Legislative Council to assign, fill in the blank, such and such a topic, for study during the interim study committee period. And so that resolution can be filed in the House or Senate, and then that request goes into the list of requests. What more often happens is you might have a bill that either you didn't really have all the X's and O's figured out ahead of time, or a bill that, through the amending through the House and Senate committees, maybe the bill has really diverged a direction, that you're really getting uncomfortable with, the direction something's gone. It's gotten more complicated. It's gotten more controversial. Many times during session, bills that are, either haven't really been vetted, well enough to move on, through the system. More likely than not, that those bills, rather than have them go down to a 50-0 defeat in the Senate, or 49-1 because you as an author might vote for yourself, rather than have those type of embarrassing situations occur, which most times if they get to that perilous of a state, they would be thoroughly defeated. And to save the embarrassment of that happening, you would amend your bill to say, we would request the Legislative Council study this particular issue more during the interim. Now, in a normal session, there'll be anywhere from 50 to 100 topics that'll be recommended for, additional study, and sometimes that's just done with the intent of, okay, Mark, that idea wasn't so great. We're just going to, ask you to pull back on it and not bring it back. And the study committee request is one way to,
just fades away.
Fade away.
Okay.
There are certain committees within the House and Senate that, typically if your bill goes to Rules Committee, it's going to Rules Committee because, it's meant to go there and just get parked. And because a lot of times the Rules Committee never meets. So when it gets assigned to Rules Committee,
it just kind of disappears.
It just kind of disappears. Well, interim study committees, but there are topics every year. There'll be 25 to 30 issues that will they'll go, and the Legislative Council is the lead Republican and Democrat from the House and Senate. So it'd be David Long and Senator Tim Lannon from the Senate, Brian Bosma, and Scott Pelath from the House. Those four members will meet in June. That's when all the requests, after you come out of session, all the requests will go in. They'll meet in June. Two things will happen. As a legislator, they'll send us a survey sheet, and they'll ask you to list what type of, what content areas of, the typical interim study committee types of committees that are set up, the areas of topic of discussion. You fill out your request of what kind of things you'd like to be involved with. And there's some seniority to the pecking order of who gets what. But most legislators are assigned 1 to 2 interim study committees, each year. I'm on one it's what they call a standing committee, that was set up legislatively about 20 years ago that meets every year, regardless of what other interim study committee topics are assigned. It's one called the Indiana Advisory Committee on Intergovernmental Relations. That's a mouthful.
Yes.
But that's basically policies that, when they're policies that overlap local, state, and federal jurisdiction, they're meant to be topics that that overlap layers of government at multiple local and state, or state and federal. And they meet every year, and we've got, I guess, some property tax issues we're going to look at that we met in May to kind of comb through what our agenda items will be in the fall. We haven't really set a calendar yet because we don't know who all of the members that will be assigned to that committee. Each year in June, the legislators are assigned to committees, and all those, most study committees have some local government, some maybe state agency, department heads assigned, business folks, from across the state, and the assignment of picking who's going to be on all those study committees, all of that happens during the month of June. So the request for people to be assigned, different legislators are asked, give me some idea of who in your agriculture community that would be good to assign to specific topics. That happens across the board on all content areas. So all of that happens in June. So the study committee membership is announced, and the study committee topics are announced. And then if they'll usually assign either a senator or a representative to be the chairman, and that alternates on a particular study committee. One year it might be a House member, the next year a Senate member. They'll assign a chairman, and then it's up to you to communicate with the other members, set a calendar, and when you're going to discuss topics, and then if there's people that would, from professionals, or if there's experts you want to invite, you work with the legislative services will have an attorney assigned to your committee. So there's a lot of times they don't start meeting in July, because just getting your experts assigned that you invite, who can be there, it just takes a little time to get all that pulled together.
Do you know yet what committee you will be on? Or
Not yet.
So that still is yet to be decided.
Yep. I know I'm on last year I chaired the one that's a mouthful, Indiana Advisory Committee on
Intergovernmental.
I chaired that last fall, and we came out with a couple of recommendations that that ended up as a part of a bill or a bill. One of the recommendations we had, and it came really from some of the local officials in Perry County. They have a lot of area of Perry County that are classified forest. Mm-hmm. They hadn't adjusted the assessed valuation of classified forest since 1929.
Wow.
Been a while.
Yeah.
So and they said, we've got tens of thousands of acres that are being assessed. It's not what you pay, it's what you assessed at $1 an acre, which means you're paying about 15 to 20 cents an acre, which is really pretty cheap. Mm-hmm. And I talked to the folks in the classified forest business, the folks in the timber business around here. They requested that it be that an adjustment of something be made, because to them it's that takes a lot of property off the tax rolls, and at a very low rate. So we talked to the folks in the forest business, and we decided to come back with basically making an inflation adjustment, since 1929. And it took the assessed value to $13 an acre. Now that's not what you pay, mm-hmm. That's what you're assessed, and so then it comes out about $1.50 an acre what you pay, which is still really cheap.
Mm-hmm. But for the state of Indiana, there's a little more money.
It's all local revenue.
Okay, for Perry County.
But for Perry County, for them, if they went from 15 cents an acre to $1.50 an acre, that's for them that's tens of thousands of dollars, mm-hmm. and for a small county, that's a big difference.
Yes.
So that was an idea of an issue that came up in committee. I filed it as a bill. And then I looked for another bill that had similar content, and I ended up working with Senator Hirschman. He had a bill that had a lot of different property tax measures in it, and I said, Senator Hirschman, here's the bill, here's the issue, here's what we've vetted it, and really nobody's opposed to it. The counties would like to see it. The folks in the timber business said it's still cheap enough that they're totally okay with it. And so he amended that into one of his omnibus property tax bills, and then it got passed into law. So sometimes I've been on study committees where the committees, after you meet, at the end of your study committee period, your last meeting, you're supposed to come up with recommendations for legislation to be adopted. And every year, I mean, sometimes study committees will meet and you have to have, not unanimous, but you have to have pretty much consensus if you're going to recommend a policy move forward to become a bill for a session. One of the committees I was on was Senator Hirschman. We had an economic development study committee that I was on with him for 3 years when I was in the House. And you get the draft recommendations, and he said, oh, okay, I'll take care of filing these items over here. I said, okay. Well, you get to be session time, and I looked through the bill list, and he didn't do it. Now, he had a lot of other bills. He probably just forgot. Mm-hmm. So then the next year we were on that committee together. Whatever recommendations came out, I made sure, and somebody, even if a study committee says, we think you need to adopt policy on this area, and here's some bullet points that need to be included, they normally won't have sometimes we had one that was an actual bill draft that we, put together as a recommendation. But a lot of times it can just be an idea and maybe some, main bullet points that need to be in it. Somebody then, a House or Senate member, has to take that and take it and work with legislative services and get a draft of a piece of legislation together and then file it with the House or Senate, clerk to make sure it becomes, a bill for discussion in session.
So this is preliminary work that's done before the legislation.
Yes, it's
But that doesn't mean that a bill can't just be all of a sudden come up in January and still be presented.
Correct. Okay. Now you have a filing time period. It usually starts about for us if session starts usually the first Tuesday of January. They'll roll back 1 month before that, and any bills that you want to file, you can start filing bills as early as about a month before session. So usually, around the first week of December, you could start filing bills. There becomes a point now. If I'm going to ask for a bill to be filed, usually when the filing of bills starts, the group is called Legislative Services. There's attorneys that each work with House and Senate committees. There's one or two attorneys in each section of code that are kind of experts in that code section. Once bill filing starts, you can't submit a request for any new bills at that point. So really, you got to start with your bill draft requests. Usually, the filing of bills when it starts, the request for new bills for legislative services ends, and you can continue to work on them in December if you've filed a request, but it keeps them from getting really an avalanche of bill requests, right at the last minute, just so they can staff them up and get the bills ready. But you can file them if we start on the first Tuesday in January. You usually have one more week when session has started to get them turned in. So LSA could be working on that draft up until 1 week into session, and then all bills that are going to be filed have to be filed.
To wrap it up, but I don't want to ask you about this one, but I know a real hot topic has been the transgender situation and the mandate from the president. You're out of legislation now, but you're getting into study committees. Is this something that's going to come up that way?
It could potentially, and I mean I think there's that mandate just came out this week, and I think there's a lot of uneasiness on how to address it. We get about $1.5 billion a year in federal dollars, be it for special education, free and reduced lunches. I mean, anything that has, federal dollars tied to it. Our K through 12 budget, about 10% of it, roughly, is federal dollars that that flow into the into the cost of the education of our kids. And what they basically said is you're going to comply with this mandate, or you could potentially lose your all of your federal money. Now it would probably happen on a school corporation by school corporation basis, more than likely. There's a lot of the suggestions in their policy statement nobody would disagree with. Uniform availability of classes that students have, on harassment policies. I mean, there was a lot of stuff in it that everybody says, well, that's just, that's obvious. That nobody would expect those things to be happening from a discrimination standpoint anyway. I think where the troubling part of it is, and I had them email me this so I could have the actual, what it says. And sorry for reading here, but it says, when a school provides sex-segregated activities and facilities, sports, restrooms, locker rooms, transgender students must be allowed to participate in such activities and access such facilities consistent with their gender identity. A school, may provide separate facilities based on the basis of sex, but must allow transgender students to access such facilities consistent with their gender identity. A school may not require transgender students to use facilities inconsistent with their gender identity, or to use individual user facilities when other students are not required to do so. A school may, however, make individual user options available to all students who voluntarily seek additional privacy. And it says the department shall interpret Title IX, which is the anti-discrimination title, to require that when a student notifies the school, they are to be treated consistently with their identity. So that would be, how do we apply that? Just having a restroom in your school that allows for unisex doesn't meet everybody's like, oh, we'll just put a bathroom in that anybody can use and problem gone. No.
As long as everybody can use it, I guess.
Well, if they're a boy and they want to use the girls' locker room and they want to use the girls' restroom, you can't stop them, even if you have a unisex bathroom available.
Well, so that's what the study committee gets to look at.
Yes.
And they'll discuss it, and then it.
Yep. So
okay.
that one's going to be.
That's going to be tricky.
And
maybe you'll get assigned to that committee.
That could be.
Lucky you.
Yeah. And really, what's going to stop a boy from being on the girls' basketball team? Nothing. If they, and
will they have to document? Will there have to be a letter that say this is how I identify, or is that
all
to be determined?
All he has to say is, this is my identity, so this is where I'm going to play.
Wow, that's going to be a tricky thing.
Yeah.
So it could be an exciting legislation coming up.
I'd say it will.
Senator, thank you very much for coming in. Really
My pleasure.
appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Our guest has been State Senator Mark Messmer, telling us about what they do over the summer in the study committees, and a hot topic possibly for this coming year. Senator, thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
And thank you for watching WJTS in Form. We're local people watching local people.